Undercover boss orders a burger at his own chain, stunned by the cashier's quiet tears. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's go back to our main character. The ones who do the work don't always get the reward. Sometimes the hardest working hands are left empty, while the system quietly favors someone else. That morning, in a small-town burger restaurant, a truth slipped out in the quietest way possible. Not through a scandal, not through shouting, but in a cashier's eyes as she tried to hide her tears behind a forced smile. Her name tag said Lisa. She had the kind of practiced politeness you see in people who can't afford to lose their job. She greeted every customer with the same words, the same slight nod, but the warmth never reached her eyes. They were rimmed red, like she had already cried before the shift even started. A few customers noticed, but looked away quickly. That's how it usually goes. Someone else's struggle gets smoothed over, forgotten in the rush of ordering a meal. At the counter stood another man. To the staff, he was just a regular customer. Baseball cap pulled low, plain t-shirt, the kind of guy who looked like he had stopped by on his lunch break. But beneath the ordinary disguise was the CEO of the entire chain. He had built this company from a single location 2 decades earlier, and now it stretched across multiple states. He wasn't here for a burger. He was here to see if the company he trusted was still living up to the promise he made to his first employees. Fairness, dignity, and respect. Lisa slid his receipt across the counter, and her hand trembled just enough for him to notice. When she turned away to grab a tray, a tear slipped down her cheek. She tried to hide it with a quick movement, brushing it away like it was nothing. But to him, it wasn't nothing. It was the first crack. Beside her stood Nelson, the store manager. Black button-down shirt, crisp collar, a silver pen clipped neatly at his chest. He didn't look at Lisa once. He kept his attention fixed on the POS terminal, swiping cards himself, approving transactions, keeping the system in his own hands. Lisa never touched the register. She only handed out food, wiped counters, and answered to his clipped commands. To the average customer, it looked like normal fast food procedure. To the man in the cap, it looked like something else entirely. He had seen this pattern before. One person doing the heavy lifting while someone else controlled the flow of money and recognition. The imbalance was subtle, but unmistakable. He carried his tray to a corner booth with a full view of the counter. The burger sat untouched, the fries cooling by the minute. He opened a small, worn notebook, the kind he always kept in his pocket, and wrote down the details. POS locked, cashier excluded, manager in control. Then he set his pen down and simply watched. Outside, a light drizzle blurred the parking lot, raindrops streaking across the wide front windows. Inside, the hum of the soda machine and the faint beep of the register filled the silence that no one dared to break. Families laughed. A group of teenagers argued over extra ketchup, and Lisa kept moving with quiet determination. Her face was calm, but her hands told the truth. They shook slightly, every time Nelson leaned over her shoulder. The CEO didn't need more proof yet. He could feel it in the air. Something was wrong in this branch, something bigger than a single bad morning. And the proof had just shown itself, not in a spreadsheet or a quarterly report, but in the quiet tears of a cashier who had been carrying more than her share for far too long. That morning, in a burger restaurant that looked like every other location in the chain, the system had already begun to reveal itself, and for the undercover boss, the investigation had just quietly begun. Lisa kept moving behind the counter, sleeves pushed up, apron clean but frayed at the edges. Every motion was efficient, almost mechanical, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. She took orders, balanced trays, filled sodas, and still managed a quiet thank you to every customer. But what stood out was not what she said, it was what she wasn't allowed to do. She never touched the register. Nelson, the manager, guarded it like it was his own personal vault. Every payment, every digital tip, every swipe went through his hands, or through the hands of 2 other employees who stayed close by. They were younger, neatly dressed, and far too relaxed for the morning rush. They leaned against the counter, chatted casually, and only stepped forward when it was time to swipe a card or press a button. The customers never noticed the difference. But the man in the booth, the one who had ordered a simple burger and soda, noticed every detail. He watched as Lisa delivered trays to a family of 4, then circled back to clean up a table abandoned by teenagers. She picked up wrappers, wiped soda rings off the surface, stacked baskets, and tossed them in the bin without missing a beat. Meanwhile, the others stayed near the glowing POS screen like it was their territory. Nelson occasionally barked a short instruction at Lisa. Table 3, refill station, without even looking at her. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried the weight of someone who believed control was enough to justify everything. The undercover boss took a slow sip of his soda, though the ice had already melted. He had been watching for nearly half an hour, and the pattern was undeniable. Lisa did the work. Nelson and his chosen helpers controlled the system. The split was invisible to outsiders, but to him it was plain as day. He scribbled in his notebook again. Workload imbalance. Cashier excluded from POS. Manager directs without participation. Then he paused, tapping the pen against the paper, remembering something from years ago. He had once told a group of new regional managers, "If you want to know the health of a store, don't look at the numbers. Look at the eyes of the staff when they hand out food." Looking at Lisa now, he knew exactly what he was seeing. Fatigue, resignation, and something worse, the look of someone who believed the system was stacked against her and that no one cared enough to fix it. A man at the next table laughed loudly, waving a receipt toward Nelson. "Hey, thanks for covering that extra sauce, man." Nelson smirked, tapped the POS again, and slipped the receipt into the register drawer. Lisa walked past with a tray, her eyes fixed on the floor. The undercover boss caught the moment, the flicker of emotion across her face, too fast for anyone else to see. He leaned back in his booth, letting the drizzle outside blur the glass even further. The restaurant looked normal from the parking lot, glowing neon, busy lunch rush. But inside, he saw something no quarterly report could show him. This wasn't about profits or losses. It was about dignity. Lisa returned to the counter, offering a polite smile to the next customer in line, even though her voice was softer than before. The undercover boss watched closely as she handed over another tray. He could tell she was holding back more than fatigue. The truth was pressing at the edges, threatening to slip out, and then it did. The customer asked casually, "Do you get to keep the tips here?" Lisa hesitated, the pause lasting only a second, but long enough for the undercover boss to notice. She forced another smile and answered in a low voice, "Not really. They go through the system. Only a few of us ever see them." She said it like it was normal, like it was just the way things had always been. No outrage, no complaint, just a quiet statement of fact. And with that, the entire facade cracked wide open. The undercover boss felt his jaw tighten. He picked up his pen again, writing 3 words underlined twice. Tip distribution broken. He didn't react outwardly. He didn't want to reveal himself yet. But in that quiet moment, watching Lisa's eyes drift away as she served another order, he knew the silent investigation had already begun. The notebook on his table wasn't just a record anymore, it was evidence. Some truths don't show up in spreadsheets or dashboards. They hide in plain sight, in receipts, in locked POS screens, in the tremble of a young woman's hands as she hands out food she prepared but can never be credited for. And in that small burger restaurant, the undercover boss had just seen enough to know. This wasn't a minor issue. This was a system that someone had deliberately tilted. A system that would have to be torn apart, piece by piece. Lisa moved quickly from table to table, balancing trays with one hand and clearing baskets with the other. Her pace was steady, almost too steady, like someone who had learned to move without drawing attention. The undercover boss, still seated in the corner booth, let his eyes follow her path. He wasn't watching like a customer. He was watching like a man who knew every detail mattered. When she passed by again, he spoke softly, casual enough to seem like small talk. "Busy shift. Guess the tips aren't bad this hour." Her hands didn't falter. She kept stacking trays as if she hadn't heard. But her eyes flicked toward him, just for a second. The kind of glance that said more than words. She smiled, polite, practiced, but it didn't reach her face. Then, her voice dropped, lower than the hum of the soda machine. "Morning shifts are the worst. especially when we split tips. Only a few of us ever get anything." She said it like it was nothing, like she was telling him the weather. No bitterness, no complaint, just a simple fact. But to him, it was the first clear admission that the system was broken. He nodded slightly, pretending not to notice the weight of her words. He lifted his soda cup, took a sip of watered-down cola, then set it back down. His notebook was still open, half hidden under a napkin. He wrote quickly. "Staff excluded. Digital tips funneled." Across the room, Nelson leaned against the counter, chatting with one of the younger employees, Tyler. Tyler's uniform was spotless, hair slicked back neatly, posture relaxed. He wasn't carrying trays, wasn't serving food, only tapping the POS screen every few minutes. Another employee, Chase, stood nearby, arms folded. Between them, the machine beeped and printed receipts. Lisa never went near it. The undercover boss shifted his gaze back to Lisa. She was refilling a coffee cup for an older man at table 7. The customer smiled at her, grateful. She smiled back, warm and genuine, for the first time since he walked in. It wasn't the job that wore her down. It was the system built around it. When she returned to collect another tray, he asked quietly, "Why don't you process payments yourself?" She didn't look at him directly. She bent slightly, lifting plates from the table beside his booth, and spoke under her breath. "I don't have access. The POS only allows certain roles. If your name isn't assigned, you don't get tips either." His jaw tightened, though his expression stayed calm. "Who assigns the roles?" Her hands never stopped moving. She stacked the plates neatly, then glanced toward the counter. "Nelson. He sets them up. Tyler's his nephew. Always gets the morning shifts. Always has full access." She didn't say another word. She didn't have to. The truth was already written between the lines. The undercover boss leaned back, pressing his pen against the notebook page. "Nepotism. Role access manipulation. Tip funneling." The notes looked small on paper, but the impact was massive. This wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. Lisa returned to the floor, pivoting smoothly between tables, refilling sodas, dropping off trays. Her hands moved without pause, but her shoulders were tense, heavy with the kind of weight only long silence creates. When she passed again, she slipped something from her apron pocket and set it down near his tray without a sound. It was a small notebook, edges bent, cover curled from use. She didn't explain. She just said quietly, "I just needed to know I wasn't crazy." He picked it up carefully, almost reverently. Each page was filled with dates, table numbers, totals, and tip amounts. Red circles marked discrepancies. Notes lined the margins, names, times, shifts. She had tracked everything for weeks. "I've lost more than $600 this month," she whispered. "But what hurts more is no one ever asked who divides the tips or how." "Oh?" He closed the notebook gently, not with finality but with respect, then set it back down. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. In his chest, something shifted. A business can survive lower margins. It can even recover from bad reviews. But when the best people start believing the system no longer sees them, that's what kills a company from the inside out. Lisa turned away, shoulders slightly hunched, as if bracing for the next shift of silence. The undercover boss stared at the notebook, its bent pages heavy with more truth than any quarterly report he had ever signed. He reached for his soda again, though it was warm and flat by now. His hand tightened around the cup. This wasn't just about Lisa. It wasn't even about this one store. It was about a system that had been quietly rewritten in plain sight. And as he looked at her moving through the dining room, steady but invisible, he knew the silent investigation had already crossed a line. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was evidence. The small notebook sat on the table in front of him, half hidden under a napkin. He didn't flip through it again. He didn't need to. Every number, every red circle, every margin note was still vivid in his mind. Lisa had done the work most executives never thought to ask for. She had documented the truth no one wanted to see. The undercover boss kept his expression steady. To anyone watching, he looked like a man waiting for his food to cool, not the CEO of the entire chain holding evidence of systemic fraud. When Lisa stepped away to deliver another tray, he reached into his pocket angled the notebook discreetly, and snapped photos of every page with his phone. Each receipt total, each discrepancy, each red pen underline captured. He slid the notebook back across the table, careful not to draw attention. Then he took out a folded sticky note, scribbled in block letters. "Keep documenting. Don't hand this to anyone. Wait for me to return." He slipped the note inside the cover and pushed it toward her coffee cup when she came back around. She caught his eye for just a second, confused, then tucked the notebook back into her apron without a word. At the counter, Nelson was laughing with a regular, his hand resting casually on the POS. The two younger employees hovered close, one tapping the screen, the other folding his arms like he owned the space. And that was when the undercover boss noticed something different. Tyler, the nephew, wasn't processing a payment this time. He leaned in, fingers moving quickly across hidden menus. The screen shifted, not to receipts, but to role settings. The undercover boss caught it only for a moment, but it was enough. Username, Tyler C. Access level, advanced. His grip tightened on the soda cup. This wasn't sloppy management. This was deliberate. A quiet reconfiguration of the system to create privileged roles, invisible to most, but powerful enough to reroute money without anyone questioning it. Nearby, a new hire hesitated with her tray, eyes darting nervously toward the register. She whispered to Lisa for help, unsure how to comp a small mistake on an order. Lisa leaned in, showed her how to adjust the code, flag allergy info, and confirm the change manually. Then, in a voice low enough for only them to hear, Lisa added, "Don't let Tyler handle your entries. He won't do it for you." The undercover boss heard every word. He realized in that moment Lisa wasn't just working harder than everyone else. She was holding the moral structure of this branch together. Quietly, unseen, she was the only thing keeping the place from collapsing completely. Minutes later, Chase, the other employee, frowned at the screen. "Weird. I could log in yesterday. Today it says restricted." Tyler smirked faintly. "Probably just a glitch. I'll take care of it." The undercover boss tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing. He knew what he was watching. Create sub-roles, limit access, redirect control. If you were clever, it didn't look like theft. It looked like configuration. He didn't need caffeine anymore. The soda was flat, but his blood was already running hot, not from anger, but from clarity. This was no misunderstanding. It was a system built to hide in plain sight. He looked around the dining room one last time. Customers ate quietly, unaware. Lisa moved with steady grace, serving without recognition. Nelson chatted with confidence, oblivious to the storm forming under his nose. And in the corner booth, the undercover boss slid his notebook shut, his mind already moving to the next step. Evidence was in his hands. Now the investigation had to expand. The drizzle outside had stopped. But inside him, the storm was only beginning. That afternoon, the undercover boss left the restaurant without looking back. To the staff, he was just another customer who had finished his meal and stepped into the damp parking lot. But in his mind, the entire chain had shifted. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his voice low but steady. "Mara," he said, "we have a problem." On the other end, Mara Lynn didn't waste time with questions. She had been head of internal investigations for 7 years, known for her quiet precision. He didn't need to explain everything. He only gave her the core instruction. The POS system is being manipulated. Go in quiet. Line by line. Every role assignment, every tip account. "Understood," she replied. That was all. Within the hour, the terminal at that location had been switched into silent audit mode. No alerts. No pop-ups. To the staff, everything looked normal. Customers ordered. Receipts printed. But behind the surface, every keystroke, every role change, every unauthorized override was being recorded in real time. The first results came the next morning. The undercover boss sat in his office, coffee untouched, as Mara's voice came through the line. Finding number 1. The system contains a hidden access tier labeled Preferred Internal. It doesn't appear on the public-facing permission screen. 3 accounts carry this tier. Brad Coleman, manager. Tyler C., part-time server. And 1 unassigned account labeled Kitchen Support 03. He leaned forward, jaw tightening. "Go on. Finding number 2. Mara continued. In the past 30 days, total digital tips exceeded $4,800. 67% of that was routed through Tyler C. His average service volume, based on ticket data, was less than 15% of total tables. The undercover boss closed his eyes briefly. The numbers confirmed what he had seen in the diner. The system wasn't just unfair, it had been engineered to be unfair. Finding number 3, Mara said. Payroll records list a part-time kitchen employee named Marcus Hill, clocked in for 21 of the last 25 mornings. But Marcus Hill does not exist in the HR database. No onboarding file, no tax documents. The Social Security number tied to the record was flagged 2 years ago in another branch investigation. He opened his eyes slowly. And who managed that branch? Brad Coleman, Mara answered without hesitation. The office went quiet. He could hear only the faint hum of the HVAC, the weight of years pressing into that silence. He had seen managers bend rules before, but this was something else, a system designed to funnel money, cover tracks, and disguise theft as procedure. Final detail, Mara said. We traced weekly service processing fees to an LLC registered out of state, Douglas Henderson, LLC. On paper, it looks like payment for staffing logistics, but the contact email on the registration belongs to Brad, same address he used before his promotion. Oh, the undercover boss leaned back in his chair, the truth settling like a stone in his chest. Lisa's notebook hadn't been paranoia. It was evidence pointing straight at the heart of deliberate fraud. He spoke quietly, but with conviction. Document everything. Do not tip them off. When I return, I want proof solid enough to tear this wide open. Mara didn't hesitate. You'll have it. He ended the call, setting the phone face down on his desk. For a long moment, he sat in silence. He thought of Lisa, moving through the dining room with quiet dignity, carrying more than her share, never complaining. She had been invisible to her own manager, but not to him. The storm inside him hadn't passed. It was only gathering force. And soon, Brad Coleman would learn what happens when you build a system on silence and assume no one is watching. The next 72 hours unfolded like clockwork. To the staff at the diner, nothing had changed. The same neon glow flickered in the window. The same register beeped with every swipe. Customers came and went, sipping sodas, unwrapping burgers. But behind the surface, every keystroke was being logged, every roll change preserved in an invisible record. By the third day, the undercover boss had more than suspicions. He had patterns. Mara's team delivered them in clean reports, each page more damning than the last. Finding number 4, Mara said on their daily call, tip redirection isn't random. Every time Nelson or Tyler accessed the role settings, changes happened within 3 minutes of a high-value order. The system was configured so certain staff accounts were permanently flagged as supplemental. Those accounts never received digital tips. The undercover boss ran a hand across his face. He had built the system for transparency, equal split across all staff. Seeing it twisted into a tool for favoritism and theft cut deeper than any financial loss. Mara's voice stayed steady. Finding number 5. The Phantom Account Kitchen Support 03 was used to log in during hours when the real staff listed on the schedule weren't even on site. It shows tip receipts routed through that account, then transferred to Tyler's balance. He stared at the report in front of him. So they created a ghost worker to skim tips. Exactly, Mara said. It's not just sloppy bookkeeping, it's coordinated. The undercover boss pushed back from his desk, standing by the window. Outside, traffic moved slowly through wet streets, headlights reflecting on the asphalt. He thought again of Lisa, slipping that notebook from her apron, whispering that she just wanted to know she wasn't crazy. She had been right all along. Mara, he said quietly, when I walk back into that store, I want this airtight. No loopholes, no excuses. You'll have it, she replied. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then he added, make sure Lisa's name is cleared in the system. Every hour she worked, every tip she earned. I want it restored. Already in progress, Mara said. He ended the call and set the report down. The numbers blurred for a moment as he exhaled. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about something far more dangerous. When a system teaches people that silence is safer than truth, the business doesn't just lose dollars, it loses its soul. That evening, he drove past the diner again. He didn't go inside, not yet. He watched from the parking lot as Lisa moved quickly behind the counter, just as she had before. Nelson stood near the register, confident, unaware. Tyler lingered at his side, smirking between orders. From the outside, it looked like business as usual. Inside, the system was already collapsing under the weight of its own lies. The undercover boss tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Soon, the disguise would come off. And when it did, Brad Coleman and his allies would face more than questions. They would face the truth, in front of everyone they had kept in the dark. The storm he had carried since that first quiet tear at the counter was ready to break. And this time, it wouldn't be silent. On the fourth morning, the undercover boss returned to the diner. This time, he didn't wear the baseball cap or the faded t-shirt. He walked in with steady steps. No disguise, no hesitation. The bell above the door chimed, and the usual murmur of conversation quieted for a beat before resuming. To the staff, he was just another customer at first glance. But this time, he wasn't here to blend in. He was here to confront. Lisa was at the counter again, apron tied tight, hair pulled back neatly. She offered her usual quiet smile as she handed a tray to a young mother juggling two kids. When her eyes flicked up and caught his, something in her expression shifted recognition, but also disbelief. He gave her a small nod, a silent reassurance. Nelson, standing near the POS with his polished shirt and silver pen, looked up as well. His posture straightened, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Can I help you?" he asked. Voice clipped, assuming this man was just another customer asking too many questions. The undercover boss didn't answer right away. He stepped to the counter, set down a folder, and opened it slowly. Pages of audit reports, printed in black and white, spread across the laminate surface. Role assignments, tip redirection, ghost accounts. Dates and times lined up with every fraudulent transaction. "Explain this," he said calmly, his voice carrying just enough weight to cut through the hum of the soda machine. Nelson's smirk faltered. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the numbers he wasn't supposed to see laid out in plain sight. Lisa froze in place, tray in hand, her eyes wide. The undercover boss straightened his shoulders. "I'm not just a customer. My name is Jackson Reeves. I built this company, and I will not stand by while you rewrite the rules for your own gain." The dining room fell silent. A few customers stopped mid-bite. Phones lifted discreetly. Lisa set the tray down, her hands trembling, and whispered, "You're the CEO?" Jackson nodded once. "And I'm here because of you." He pointed toward the notebook still tucked in her apron. "You had the courage to write down what no one else would." Nelson's face drained of color. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered. "These are system errors, glitches." "Glitches don't funnel 67% of tips into one account," Jackson interrupted, his voice sharp now. He tapped the page with his finger. "Glitches don't create phantom employees." This was deliberate. The weight of his words pressed into the room. For the first time, Nelson had no script to hide behind. And for the first time, Lisa realized she wasn't invisible anymore. The confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back. The silence inside the diner stretched heavy, broken only by the soft hiss of the fryer in the kitchen. Nelson swallowed hard, his polished confidence slipping away. Tyler shifted beside him, eyes darting to the door like he was already planning an exit. Jackson didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The folder of evidence between them spoke louder than anything. He turned one page after another, each one a nail in the coffin. Every customer who left a digital tip thought they were thanking the person who served them, Jackson said evenly. "Instead, you rerouted that money into your nephew's account. 67%. That's theft. Not from me. From her." He nodded toward Lisa. She stood frozen, her eyes wide, caught between fear and relief. For weeks, she had carried the suspicion alone, wondering if anyone would believe her. Now, the truth was out in front of everyone. Nelson's voice cracked as he tried to defend himself. "It's not like that. The system's complicated." Jackson cut him off with a raised hand. "Number? The system is simple. Work hard, serve customers, earn your share. You rewrote it so that honesty lost and manipulation won. The room shifted. Customers leaned in closer. A teenager near the back whispered to his friend, "That guy owns this place." Phones tilted higher. Screens glowed. The confrontation was no longer private. It was a reckoning. Jackson placed one more page on the counter. Payroll logs. The ghost employee, Marcus Hill. "Explain this," he said coldly. "A worker who doesn't exist. Hours clocked in, tips routed, but no record in HR. You built a fake employee to cover your theft." Tyler's voice cracked. "It was just an idea that stole money from every real employee in this room." Jackson snapped back. His tone didn't rise, but the force behind it made Tyler flinch. Lisa finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "I kept notes. Every night. I thought maybe I was crazy, but it was real." "Oh," Jackson turned to her, his expression softening. "You weren't crazy. You were brave. And now everyone knows the truth." Nelson tried one last time, desperation bleeding through his words. "Please, this can be fixed. Don't escalate it." Jackson leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "It's already escalated. You escalated it the moment you decided loyalty meant nothing, and greed meant everything." For the first time, Nelson had no response. The polished manager who once controlled the floor now looked small behind the counter he had used as a shield. Jackson closed the folder with deliberate calm. The sound echoed in the stillness. Then he said the words that ended it all. "You're finished here. Effective immediately." Gasps rippled through the diner. Customers exchanged looks, staff froze mid-motion, and Lisa pressed a hand to her mouth as if trying to hold back years of exhaustion all at once. The confrontation was over. Justice had entered the room. Nelson stood frozen behind the counter. The color drained from his face. Tyler looked down at the floor, his smirk gone, his posture small. Around them, the weight of silence pressed in. The room was no longer theirs to control. Jackson didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. He simply turned toward the staff, his tone steady. "From this moment forward, tip distribution will be transparent. Every cent will go where it belongs. No exceptions, no favorites." Lisa's eyes widened, her hand still pressed against her mouth. The relief that washed across her face was quiet, but unmistakable. For weeks she had carried the weight of silence. Now, it was lifted. Jackson placed a card on the counter, the silver lettering catching the light. "This is my office line. Effective immediately, Lisa. You're promoted to shift leader. You saw the truth and had the courage to protect it, even when it cost you. That's the kind of leadership this company needs." The room shifted again. A murmur of approval rippled through the diner. A few customers even clapped softly, not because they had been entertained, but because they had just witnessed fairness restored in real time. Nelson tried to speak, but the words never came. Security, already alerted by headquarters, arrived minutes later. Quiet, professional, no scene. Nelson and Tyler were escorted out the back door, their time at the company over. Jackson turned back to the staff. This company wasn't built on greed. It was built on hard work and dignity. From today, the system will reflect that. If you work, you get paid. If you serve, you get recognized. That's the promise. Lisa blinked back tears, but this time they weren't silent or hidden. They were visible, born of relief, of being seen at last. She straightened her shoulders, nodding with quiet resolve. Jackson gathered the folder, tucking it under his arm. He didn't look back at Nelson or Tyler. They were no longer part of the story. Instead, he looked at the employees who had stayed silent out of fear, and gave them a choice without words. The culture of silence was over. As he stepped outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner. The drizzle had stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds, reflecting off the damp asphalt of the parking lot. He paused for a moment, taking in the sight of the diner behind him, a place that looked ordinary but had revealed extraordinary truths. In a calm voice, meant not just for the staff but for everyone watching, he said, "Fairness isn't a favor, it's a foundation. Ignore it, and you lose everything. Protect it, and you build something that lasts." Then he walked away, leaving behind a diner no longer ruled by silence, but by integrity,